He had everything: wealth, power, success. But what happens when a millionaire hides his fortune to find true love and falls for a homeless girl who has nothing? Nathaniel Carter, a millionaire living in luxury, is tired of people who only love him for his money. He wants to know what it feels like to be truly loved, a love not obscured by fame and wealth. Emily Parker, a homeless girl who once had big dreams but was cruelly crushed by life. She has nothing but resilience and a good heart. When fate brings them together, a love in poverty blossoms, simple yet sincere. But what happens when the truth is revealed? Can Emily forgive when she learns that the man she trusted has been hiding his true identity? Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any stories. Now, let's relax and listen to today's story. A steady night rain poured down on the cold streets of New York, washing away all traces of a long, hurried day. Under the dim light of a street lamp, a man stood silently, quietly observing the world before him. Nathaniel Nate was a millionaire, CEO of one of the largest investment firms in America. But at this moment, no one can realize that. The worn-out jacket, faded jeans, muddy shoes, all contributed to making him look like a homeless person wandering the streets. But this was his choice. After being betrayed and taken advantage of so many times by women who only wanted his money, Nate wanted to try something different. Find someone who can love you for who you are, not for your fat bank account. He left his luxurious office, left behind the lavish dinners, the expensive suits, and entered a world he had never experienced. The world of people who had nothing but themselves. On a small street corner, under an old porch, Emily Parker sat huddled, trying to keep warm with a thin coat. Her messy brown hair hid her thin face. Her blue eyes were tired, but still shining with a strong will. She had it all: a bright future, a prestigious scholarship, big dreams. But life was never easy. An accident took away her parents, debt dragged her down, and finally, she lost everything. From a promising student, she became homeless, struggling every day to survive. But even when life was cruel, Emily never lost her kindness. Tonight, she spent the whole day collecting cans and doing odd jobs to earn a few coins. The rain suddenly came. She hid in a corner on the sidewalk, where she could temporarily shield herself from the bitter cold. Nate stepped closer. She raised her head, her eyes wary. Homeless people like her had to be careful. The streets weren't safe, especially for a young woman. "Are you okay?" His voice was warm but hesitant. Emily looked at the man in front of her. He looked as poor as she did, with wet hair and old clothes. She guessed he was another homeless person, maybe just out of work, maybe just evicted. She had encountered such stories many times. "Better than some people," she replied, smiling faintly. Nate stared at her for a long time. He didn't know why, but there was something about this woman that he couldn't take his eyes off of. She wasn't like the other homeless people he'd seen. There was no despair, no empty eyes of people who had given up all hope. There was something. There was hope. There was fire in her eyes. He rummaged in his pocket, intending to give her some money. But as soon as he pulled it out, Emily shook her head and refused. "I'm not asking for money," she said firmly, her eyes sharp. "If you need it more than I do, keep it." For the first time in his life, Nate was rejected when he tried to help someone. He didn't know what to say. Seeing the confusion in his eyes, Emily sighed. She wasn't one to trust people easily, but there was something about this man that made her feel like he was different from the others. She opened the small paper bag beside her, took out the last piece of bread that she was planning to save for tomorrow. Without hesitation, she broke it in half and gave him half. "We've both had bad days," she said, holding out the cake to him. "You probably need it too." Nate was stunned. No one has ever done this to him. Throughout his life, he has always been a giver. Money, opportunity, trust. But he was never the one to receive anything in return, especially from someone who had almost nothing like Emily. He took the cake. A strange, warm feeling spread through his heart. Little did he know that in this very moment, their destiny would change forever. Nate took a bite of the bread. It tasted dry and stale. But in that moment, it was the best thing he'd ever eaten. Not because of the taste, but because of the way it came to him. Sincerely, without selfish motives. Emily looked at him for a moment, then turned away, pulling her jacket closer around her. She didn't like talking to strangers much, but there was something different about this man. "Where are you?" she asked suddenly. Nate hesitated. He hadn't thought about it. He just started his fake poverty journey. "I just got here. I don't have a place to sleep yet," he told the truth. Emily looked up at the sky, the rain still showing no signs of stopping. He didn't seem like a bad guy. She sighed, then gestured towards the small porch where she was sitting. "If you don't mind sleeping on the wet ground, then just sit here." Nate looked at her, stunned by her kindness. He sat down beside her. Neither said anything more. The rain was falling softly. The yellow streetlights cast shadows of two strangers, sheltering under the same roof, one pretending to be poor, one truly poor. The next morning, the weak sunlight of a new day filtered through the tall buildings. Nate opened his eyes, feeling the pain in his body from sleeping on the cold ground. This was his first experience of homeless life, and it was harsher than he had expected. Beside him, Emily had woken up early. She was packing her few belongings into a tattered canvas bag. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Go to work." Nate raised an eyebrow. "What? He thought she was homeless?" Seeing his surprised expression, Emily burst out laughing. "Do you think I'm just going to sit around and wait for someone to help me? I have 2 arms and 2 legs. I'm not going to starve to death." With that, she stood up and wrapped a thin scarf around her neck. "If you want to survive on the streets, don't sit still. Get a job." Nate sat there, watching her leave. Who is she? A homeless woman, but resilient, strong, and proud. Somehow, he wanted to know more about her. That afternoon, Nate returned to the old corner, waiting for Emily. And then he saw her standing in a corner of the park, selling small bouquets of flowers. He smiled involuntarily. She didn't ask anyone for money. She worked. She fought to survive. Nate stepped forward. "How much for a bunch?" he asked. Emily looked up, a little surprised to see him back. But then she took a bouquet of flowers from the small bucket. $1. Nate looked at the small bouquet, the delicate wildflowers. It was only $1, but to her it was probably a meal. He took a $10 bill out of his pocket. "I'll take 10 bundles." Emily squinted, staring at him. "Do you have money?" Her voice was full of doubt. Nate realized his mistake. He forgot he was pretending to be poor. He smiled wryly. "I picked some up when I was picking up bottles this morning." Emily kept looking at him, but then she shrugged, counting 10 bouquets of flowers and handing them to him. As she took the money, she couldn't hide her relieved smile. $10 could buy her a decent meal. Nate saw that, and his heart suddenly ached a little. She was so used to being in need that even a $10 bill made her happy. He held the flowers in his hands, not knowing what to do with them. Emily laughed at his confusion. "You bought flowers and don't know what to do with them?" Nate chuckled. "I just want to help you." The smile on Emily's lips suddenly disappeared. She put the money in her pocket, then looked at him seriously. "Don't pity me. I'm not a pitiful person. I sell flowers, you buy them. It's a fair trade." Nate was silent. She had more self-esteem than anyone he had ever met, and right now, he realized he wanted to know more about this girl. That night, Nate came to the old porch again, waiting for Emily. She arrived later than yesterday, looking more tired. But when she saw him sitting there, she was a little stunned. "You still haven't found a place to stay?" she asked. He shrugged. "I think I have good company here." Emily shook her head and smiled slightly. "You really are strange." She sat down next to him and opened the small paper bag. Today, with the money Nate spent on flowers, she could buy a decent sandwich. She broke it in half and gave him half. Nate looked at her, feeling his chest warm strangely. 2 days ago, he was a millionaire, living in a luxurious penthouse. But right now, under the old porch, eating a piece of bread with this homeless girl, he felt more peaceful than ever. Little did he know that at this very moment, his heart had begun to change, and his and her destiny had truly turned in another direction. Nate had never known the harshness of poverty. He had been born into luxury, but now he was in a completely different place. A shanty town, one meal cannot even fill the stomach. This is not your world, but you chose it. Nate stepped out into the street wearing an old coat he bought from a thrift store. He wanted to understand the lives of poor people. Want to know the feeling of having nothing in hand, but still have to live on. He returned to the small market where Emily sold flowers. She was still sitting there, with a faded scarf around her neck, her long hair flowing in the wind. When she saw him, she narrowed her eyes. "What are you doing here?" Nate shrugged, smiling slightly. "Just wanted to buy another flower." Emily looked at him doubtfully, but then took out a small daisy and placed it in his hand. "Yesterday, you helped me. Today, I give it to you." Nate looked at the flower in his hand, then at her. Her smile, although a little tired, but strangely warm. In the following days, Nate began to live like a normal person. A man with no money, no status. He rented a small room in a slum. The old bed, dirty kitchen, and the noise of the city at night made it difficult for him to sleep. He did odd jobs like washing dishes in a small restaurant and serving in a coffee shop. I never thought life could be so hard, but the strange thing was, he felt free. No one looks at you for your money. No one flatters you just because they know who you are. At first, Emily didn't believe Nate. She had met too many men who said nice things, but then left when they found out who she was, a homeless person with no future. But Nate is different. He didn't show her any pity. He was simply there, helping her carry heavy buckets of water, arrange bouquets of flowers, and sometimes even run errands for her. One evening, as the two of them sat under the awning of a grocery store, Emily suddenly said, "I had a dream once, you know." Nate tilted his head. "What dream?" "Become a chef." She smiled bitterly. "But then everything fell apart. I lost my mother, my home, everything." Nate was silent. He had never known such loss. But he knew one thing. He wanted to help her. The next day, Nate found a small coffee shop that was hiring. No experience necessary, just hard work. He immediately turned back to find Emily. "Do you want to try working in a coffee shop?" She hesitated. "Me? You think I can do it?" "Sure." Nate nodded. "You're used to working hard, aren't you?" Finally, she agreed to try. Emily started working in the coffee shop. She learned to serve customers, make coffee, and for the first time in years, she felt like she had a place in the world. Nate still stopped by regularly, helping her clean up and chatting with her during breaks. Between them, something gradually changed. A warmth permeated the conversations, a subtle care in every little gesture, an emotion that neither of them dared to name. Late one evening, it suddenly rained. Emily stepped outside, tilted her head back, and welcomed the cold drops of water. Nate stood under the cafe awning, looking at her. "Aren't you afraid of getting wet?" Emily opened her eyes, turned to him, and smiled. "My life is already this bad. What's a little rain?" Nate laughed. But then, he unconsciously reached out to brush a strand of wet hair away from her face. For the first time in his life, Nate felt something truly meaningful. Not million-dollar contracts, not fancy dinners. Just a girl sitting in front of him with a gentle smile in the rain. And I know. This is the first time in my life that I truly love someone. Nate was careful. He planned everything. He knew how to blur his tracks, blending into the poor life without revealing his true identity. But just one moment of carelessness, and everything starts to fall apart. The cafe was busier than usual that day. Emily busied herself with making drinks, while Nate helped her clear away the tables. In his haste, Nate pulled out his phone to check the time, and in a moment of carelessness, his sleeve slipped down, revealing a Rolex watch that glistened in the light. Emily blinked. She stared at the clock, an expensive design she had seen in business magazines. Her heart was pounding. Why would a homeless person own such an item? She felt something was very wrong. But Emily said nothing. She just watched him silently all that evening. A few days later, something unexpected happened. While Emily was busy making drinks, a customer walked into the bar, a middle-aged man in a fancy suit. He was on the phone as he walked up to the counter, but then, when his eyes fell on Nate, he suddenly stopped. Nathaniel Carter? The air seemed to freeze. Nate stiffened, the coffee cup in his hand almost falling to the ground. Emily stood behind the counter, her whole body tense. What did that man just call you? Nathaniel Carter? That name. She had heard that name before. It's not just a name. It's a legend in the financial world. Nathaniel Carter, CEO of Carter Investments, one of the city's youngest millionaires. Nate tried to calm down, but it was too late. The other man laughed and patted him on the shoulder. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm seeing you here. What are you doing in this cafe? Don't tell me you got bored with finance and switched to being a waiter. Emily held her breath. She looked straight at Nate, waiting for an explanation. But Nate said nothing. And in that moment, she knew she had been deceived. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat on the old chair in the small rented room, her heart beating wildly. With trembling hands, she opened her phone and typed into the search bar, Nathaniel Carter. In just a second, a series of results appeared. CEO of Carter Investments. Young millionaire with huge fortune. Successful businessman who was on the cover of Forbes magazine. Emily felt like the world was falling apart. Is it all a lie? The man she trusted, the man she shared her most sincere moments with, turned out to be just playing a game? She remembered how he helped her, how he looked at her with gentle eyes. Is it all real? Or is it just a play he created to satisfy his curiosity? Emily smiled bitterly. She loved him. But you are just like everyone else. The rich always consider the fate of the poor as a pastime. She couldn't stand it. She had to face him. The next morning, when Nate walked into the coffee shop, Emily was already waiting. She crossed her arms, her eyes cold. Who are you really, Nathaniel Carter? Nate was stunned. Emily, can you explain? Explain? Emily laughed, but her voice was bitter. What do you mean? That it was all a game? That you were just testing whether a homeless girl could love a poor man? Nate shook his head, his eyes filled with pain. No, it's not like that. I never intended to deceive you. No intention of lying? Emily sneered. Then why did you hide it from me? Do you know how much I trusted you? Nate opened his mouth to say something, but Emily raised her hand to stop him. Do you know what it feels like to be betrayed? Her voice broke. I lost everything. I lost my family, my home, my future. I thought I could never trust anyone again. But you made me believe. Her eyes were red, but she held back her tears. But in the end, you were just a lie. Nate clenched his fists. I don't want you to love me for my money. His voice was low. I've been betrayed too many times. All the women who have been with me were only for my money. I'm afraid that if you knew the truth, you would leave me too. Emily stared at him. So, what now? You think by lying to me, you can keep me? Nate was silent. Emily bit her lip, then whispered, I fell in love with you, Nate. Nate froze. But not Nathaniel Carter, the rich millionaire. I fell in love with a poor man, a good listener, a sincere man. Her voice choked. But that person never existed, right? Nate wanted to say something, but no words could change what had happened. Emily took a step back. We end here. She turned and walked away. Nate could only stand there, watching her figure leave. And for the first time in his life, he understood what real loss was. Emily never believed in things that were too good to be true. Her life had taught her that beautiful things would eventually fade away, that hope was a luxury for people like her. Yet Nate had made her believe otherwise. He made her believe that there was still good in this world. He made her feel appreciated and loved, even for a short time. But now, all of that is a lie. Next day, Emily didn't know how she managed to leave the cafe that day. She didn't know how she could drag her heavy steps on the cold sidewalk without collapsing. All she could feel was her heart breaking. The memories keep coming back: Nate's smile, the times he listened to her talk, the way he gently held an umbrella for her on rainy days. All a lie. He was never a poor man. He never really understood what she went through. For him, this is just an experiment, a game to test whether a girl can love you without money. Emily clenched her hands, her nails digging into her palms until they hurt. She felt like an idiot. She believed him. She loved him. But he just saw her as a test. Emily doesn't want to see Nate again. She didn't want to hear any explanation from him. But fate was too cruel to her. As she was walking down the familiar street, a voice rang out. Emily! She paused. That voice, the voice she once loved so much. She bit her lip, clenched her hands, and turned back. Nate stood there, breathing heavily, as if he had run. He looked at her, his blue eyes filled with worry. Emily, I've been looking for you all day. She stared at him, not saying a word. His face was still the same, but now, all she saw was lies. Can you explain? Nate stepped forward, his voice shaking. Emily stepped back. Explain? She laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. She took a deep breath, her eyes cold. Do you know what it feels like to actually sleep on the streets? Nate was stunned. Emily didn't stop. Do you know how many days I have gone hungry? How many times have I been chased away, looked down upon, and looked at with contempt? Nate swallowed. Emily interrupted. But to you, it's all just a game. Her voice broke. You can pretend to be poor. You can play the street life experience game, and when you get bored, you can go back to being a millionaire. But what about me? She took a step forward, her eyes red. This is my life. This is my reality. Nate looked at her painfully. Emily, I never meant to hurt you. His voice was hoarse. I just want to find true love. Someone who loves me for who I am, not for my money. Emily burst out laughing, tears welling up in the corners of her eyes. So you think the best way to do that is to lie to me? Nate clenched his fists. I don't know what else to do. Emily closed her eyes, her shoulders shaking. Then she looked straight into his eyes. Her voice was light, but carried an indescribable pain. So what now? Did you get what you wanted? Nate opened his mouth, but couldn't form words. Emily bit her lip, then took a step back. I can't be with you. Nate was stunned. Emily, don't do that. She turned away, her voice like a knife cutting into his heart. I can't love someone I can't trust. And then, she left. That night, Emily lay curled up in the corner of the makeshift tent. She closed her eyes, but could not sleep. Every memory of Nate kept playing over and over in her head. Gentle touches, clear laughter. The moments when she believed she had finally found someone who truly cared about her. But now, it's all gone. She used to fear this, afraid that when she loves someone she will eventually lose them. And just as she thought, she lost him, and Nate couldn't sleep either. He sat alone in his luxurious penthouse, an apartment that he had once found comfortable and convenient. But now, it's just a cold void. I lost Emily. And for the first time in his life, he realized that there were things more valuable than money. But he lost the most important thing in his life. Emily told herself that she would forget him. She will return to her life. No Nate Carter, no distant dreams, no beautiful promises that eventually burst like soap bubbles. But why is everything so difficult? No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't erase him from her heart. And Nate wouldn't let her do that either. Since losing Emily, Nate has not been himself. He thought that with money he could do anything. But now, he has lost the only thing that money can't buy: Emily's love. He tried to reach out to her, tried to take her to a better place. But every time he reached out, Emily refused. She did not want his help. She doesn't want anything to do with him anymore. But no matter how many times she pushed him away, Nate wouldn't give up. It was a cold winter day. Nate happened to pass by a dark alley when he saw a scene that made him shiver. Emily surrounded by a group of strange men. She was protecting an elderly homeless woman, standing in front of her, and refusing to leave. "Get out of here," one of them roared. "This is our place." Emily did not back down. "She can't go anywhere else." Her voice was firm. "Do whatever you want to me, but leave her alone." Nate didn't think anything of it. He rushed in like a storm. A punch landed hard on his face, but he didn't care. He just knew that he couldn't lose her again. The fight happened in a flash. It wasn't until they left that Emily realized Nate was standing in front of her, his face bruised and breathing heavily. Why are you here?" Nate wiped the blood from his lips, smiling slightly. "For you." She was stunned. "You don't have to do this." Her voice trembled. "You don't have to prove anything to me." Nate shook his head. "I'm not doing this to prove anything." He stepped closer to her, his eyes sincere. "I'm doing this because I love you." Emily felt her heart pounding. She used to think that love was a luxury. She once thought that she would never dare to bet her heart again. But in that moment, looking into Nate's eyes, she realized that he had never pretended to love her. He loved her sincerely and intensely. Nate knelt before her. He took a small ring out of his pocket. A simple but meaningful ring. "I bought this ring a long time ago. This ring is the fruit of my labor while I was with you," he whispered. "But I always hid it, because I was afraid that you would never forgive me." Emily choked. Nate looked deep into her eyes. "I don't need to pretend to be poor to know that you are the woman I want to be with for the rest of my life. Whether I am a millionaire or have nothing in my hands, I will still choose you." Tears streamed down Emily's face. She used to be afraid of love, afraid of being hurt. But she also knew that if she didn't take this hand right now, she would regret it for the rest of her life. Emily is not running away anymore. She stepped forward, placed her hand on Nate's face, and nodded slightly. "I love you." Nate held his breath. "So will you agree to be my wife?" A moment of silence. Then she smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Have." Nate pulled her into his arms and placed a kiss on her lips. A kiss that was not just sweet, but affirming. That whether poor or rich, no matter how many challenges they go through, their love will still conquer all. Under the night sky, among the dim lights of the city, they found each other again. And this time, nothing could keep them apart. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this story, don't forget to like to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any stories.